You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
So Albert Einstein's on an airplane, and it's going to be a very long flight. So he turns to the guy sitting next to him, and he says, "We should have a game to pass the time. I'm going to ask you a question, and if you get it wrong, you give me $5. And then you get to ask me a question. And if I get it wrong, I give you $500. The guy sitting next to him goes, "All right, I'm game. You get to go first." And Albert says, "All right. How far is it to the moon?" The guy thinks for a couple seconds and says, "I don't know." He hands over $5. Albert says, "It's your turn now." And the guy says, "All right. So what goes up a hill on 3 legs, but comes down a hill on 4? And Albert thinks, and he thinks, puts all of his abilities into it and just can't come up with an answer. So he takes $500 out of his pocket and gives it to the guy next to him. He goes, "Well, I guess it's my turn now, but I got to ask you, what does go up a hill with 3 legs and comes down with 4? And the guy smiles, reaches into his pocket, pulls out $5 and hands it to Albert. Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. We have launched member services today. I know we've got a new commercial for it and all that. I don't know that much about it yet. I know we've got a couple different tier levels, gets you a bunch of really great stuff. You're going to see more and more about it. But the bottom line is you want to sign up, you want to be a member, you want to get on our mailing list. It's good stuff, man. So now we are going to talk about a few different things today. But we are going to start up with some news that just hit a little while ago. And it's news we've been wondering about because we're getting closer and closer to October, and that's when this usually happens. But the official word is no DC fandom for this year. Now, will there be one next year? They're not really saying. But in a statement from DC, they say, with the return of in-person events, Warner Brothers Discovery is excited to be able to engage with our fans live at numerous Comic-Cons around the world and will not be scheduling DC Fandom for 2022. Well, yeah, you can take it at face value, and there's a good possibility. But the fact is that I don't think Warner Brothers has exactly locked in what they're doing with DC, whether it's the movies, the video games, the comics, or anything. So having DC Fandom really wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, would it? Plus, we got New York Comic-Con coming up. So if they were going to make any announcements, they could do it there. Why schedule this big, huge thing? So it does seem like they are pulling the plug on DC Fandom. And, I don't think I'm going to miss it. The first one was really cool, but the second one was kind of, as good as the first one was, there really wasn't that many announcements at the second one. So not going to miss it. Be interesting to see. I still think Warner Brothers really needs to kind of get their stuff together and get a big announcement out. What was the other DC news today, JD? I may not have seen it.
That was me.
Oh, okay, Kyle.
DC announced that they are adding another distributor for their comics, making it easier for comic book stores to get and carry all their print material.
Oh, that's smart, because I know they were having since they went on their own, they've been having some issues.
Right. They've been with Lunar now for a couple of years, and they're adding universal distribution to the mix, which the kind of the industry consensus that I've seen is so they'll go with anybody but Diamond.
Yeah.
There's already a meme of a Jerry Springer show where it's the DC logo on one head and the Diamond logo on the other. But I thought it was interesting that, they were the first kind of to leave Diamond, and it kind of started this wave. And now the company that they kind of created to, because they basically created Lunar so they'd have a distributor, isn't going to be their only distributor anymore.
And it's fascinating because they were the first one to sign exclusive with Diamond when Marvel bought Heroes World and really pushed the whole change back in the mid-90s.
Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting bit of news.
Yeah.
DC not having Fandom and then announcing this, they seem to be making big moves this week.
Yep. That and renewing Harlequin for a fourth season. I still don't think they know what they're doing. So, all right. JD says the new Wickline music is so violent. I remember the tune. That was fun to whistle when having a whiz. Now, see, I like this much more rockin' tune. It's more my style than the that we had at first. So, all right. What we're going to talk about today, I had to come up with something because I didn't really have a good topic for today, but we got a few things we're going to talk about, one of which is She-Hulk dropped last night. We're not going to talk about what happens on the episode. We're going to talk about that on Tuesday. But we are going to kind of talk She-Hulk adjacent, things that involve the series in a sense. And the first thing I was going to talk about is I made a comment the other day that they're kind of making people want to go back and rewatch The Incredible Hulk because we've already had William Hurt come back. We've got Tim Roth popping up now in the series. And The Incredible Hulk, I mean, it came out in 2008. It's almost 15. It's 14 years ago now. Going to be 15 next year. And it didn't really get it definitely didn't get the hype that Iron Man did. It was, hey, Iron Man's incredible. And the Hulk is, well, it's out, which is a shame. Because I actually, this morning I wanted to be able to say, well, if you want to see The Incredible Hulk, then you could go here to watch it because it's not on Disney Plus because they don't have the deal for it. So, yeah, JD says the Incredible Hulk movie is nowhere near as bad as people put on their MCU list. It was good, not great, but it wasn't bad. And I'm going to completely agree with you, not only because I thought that beforehand, but I looked out this morning and I thought, okay, where is it? Turns out it's on HBO Max. So if you've got HBO Max to watch some of the DC stuff, you've got The Incredible Hulk, or if you have it on Blu-ray like I do. But I wanted to make sure it was there, so I went out and I ended up watching the first half hour of it this morning. And I got to say, that is there are weirder parts later in the episode, in the movie, but that first half hour is really good. It has a lot of feel to the old the Bill Bixby series, but there is a horror element to it. I mean, we don't see the Hulk in the first half hour, but we know he's there because there is the whole fight with the soldiers with Blonsky, and that is really well staged. Louis Leterrier, who did the movie, did a fantastic job with that. You know, the chasing through the city, or the streets, all of that. It just had a really good vibe to it. But the fight in the bottling company, or the bottling plant, that was really good. You had the intensity of it. You had the fight set up. We didn't get to see the Hulk. He was kind of in the shadows or in the mist. And I thought that was really great. And then you've got this scene after all of that between Tim Roth and William Hurt. And both of these guys are great actors. And it's the whole reveal. Roth is going, I don't know what the hell hit us, but that was the strongest thing I've ever seen. I'm going to find Banner and put my foot on his throat until he tells me what the hell that was. And Ross has to come around and go, that was Banner, and has to explain the whole thing. And then we get the whole tie-in to the super soldier serum. And what you've got there is basically the backbone of the MCU, with how so much of what came about in the MCU is because of people trying to replace the super soldier serum or come up with a new version of it. There's so much of that in the MCU. And that was the first part of it. Banner was working on a segment of the super soldier serum, even though he didn't know it. And I also love the fact that not only did we not have to re-go through the origin, but they give it to us in the opening credits. And again, it feels a lot more like the TV series. There are little nods, like the little target thing that goes on his forehead is straight out of the Bill Bixby series. So there was a lot of great nods to the old series. They gave us the whole origin in the opening credits, and then they get us into the movie. And again, the first half hour is just quick. After that, that's when they start bringing Betty in. They bring the romance in. It slows down a little bit. Yeah, the origin in 20 seconds was awesome. So, you may not like some parts of that movie, but I think that first half hour is as strong as any Marvel movie out there. I think it really gets us into the character. And I don't necessarily know if Mark Ruffalo would have done a better job of it. I know that Ruffalo was actually the director's first choice, and the studio wanted, and I think Universal was the one that wanted it, but they wanted Ed Norton because he was a bigger name. So Jay says, and the transformation on the table with Tim Blake Nelson, body horror. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Later on. And the setup with Tim Blake Nelson as the leader and Blonsky and all that was great. JD says, my only complaint is that they didn't let the Hulk speak besides 2 lines, and the pace of the second half feels rushed compared to the first half, which might have been a studio interference, according to Ed Norton. Yep, or it could be Ed Norton's interference, because I know he was pushing a lot of stuff too. So it's not a perfect movie, but it's not nearly as bad as a lot of the, where it falls on the list and stuff. But my opinion on the Marvel movies is even the worst Marvel movie is better than a lot of the other movies out there. When you're comparing it to other Marvel movies, yeah, it's not as good. You take the first Iron Man movie, and that's going to be better than Thor 2, the Dark World. But, you take a movie like The Eternals or the Hulk or Thor the Dark World, and you put it up against, say, Green Lantern, Morbius. All of those are good. Those movies are better than the ones from outside the MCU. Hey, Mark, glad you could join us. But then I was thinking about this last night. There is, we're talking about Tim Roth coming back. We have William Hurt back, and a lot of people want Samuel Stearns back. They want the leader. And it seems like they're setting up something in She-Hulk. Maybe there's a big bad. We get a little hint of it last night, but again, I don't want to get into that because people may not have watched it. But a lot of people want Samuel Stearns. They set up the leader with Tim Blake Nelson. I think bringing Tim Blake Nelson back, if he's available, would be awesome. Also, if they want to bring back Liv Tyler, I've got no problem with that either. But there is a character that was introduced in The Incredible Hulk that I think could easily come back and would fit great into the She-Hulk series because of the humor and stuff like that. And that would be Doc Samson, Dr. Leonard Samson, who, of course, is from the comics. He's in the film, he's played by Ty Burrell. And we only get him known as Leonard. They don't ever give his last name. But we know that he's Leonard, and he's a psychiatrist. And that's pretty much Doc Samson. Though in the comics, his actual last name is Skivorsky. But he basically siphons gamma radiation off of Banner using a cathex's ray with the idea of saving Betty, who had been turned into a kind of a crystalline form. And he hoped to use this ray. Well, after he used the rays to save Betty, he decided to use the last of it to irradiate himself. Now, there wasn't a lot, but there was enough that turned him kind of into this muscle-bound, super strong person with long, flowing green locks. And he's a fascinating comic character. He's been around quite a long time. But I think if you bring him in with Ty Burrell, who is this great comedic actor, and you could easily bring him into the She-Hulk series, and it would make a lot of sense. Having a psychiatrist you could call on as a expert witness makes perfect sense, having to do with a law firm. And if it's if you're dealing with superhuman individuals, having a superpowered psychiatrist makes even more sense. So I would love to see them bring in Doc Samson. And even if they bring him in prior to him getting powered, you just have him come in as Ty Burrell, and then eventually he changes. But again, that you'd have to do CGI again because Ty Burrell isn't that big. But it would be an interesting character, and I think he'd be really fun. And Burrell isn't doing much right now. With Modern Family ending, the only thing I see listed for his current work right now is voice work for Duncanville. So Burrell has the time. You bring him in. I think it'd be a lot of fun. So, and again, bringing in another gamma radiated hero, they do seem to be kind of setting that up in some of the things we've seen, like people, that we might get more gamma irradiated heroes or villains depending on what happens. So I think Doc Samson would be a neat addition. And again, Ty Burrell joining the series as a from a comedic point of view, I think that could be a lot of fun. So, but again, I don't want to talk about the third episode because I don't want to give anything away. But there's a group I want to talk about, and we're going to talk about that after we take our first commercial break. So let's do that. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about the Wrecking Crew. Be right back.
Get the inside scoop on everything happening at the Experience every week. Join our mailing list by scanning the QR code at the bottom of the screen and then watching your email inbox. Hey, it's producer Kyle. If you like going places where the action never stops like Las Vegas, the Caribbean, and Atlantic City, then you're probably not who I want to talk to. But if you want to surround yourself with amazing comic books and comic book content made by a devoted group of smart and funny industry insiders, the Experience Members Club was made for you. You can join the Experience by becoming a supporting member of our YouTube channel. You get access to exclusive content that no one else gets, like members-only live streams, pre-sales, one-on-one Q&As with production staff, and other content that's exclusively for members. Plus, for a limited time, if you sign up now, you'll be entered into our giveaway of a slabbed comic book. Just call this 1-8... Wait, hold on. It's 2022. No one makes phone calls anymore. Scan the QR code at the bottom of the screen, or just visit the membership section of our YouTube page, and you'll be on the VIP line of the comic book buffet, baby. Look at the size of those perks. Join today, and I'll be saying, who loves you, baby? Me. The answer is me.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
Hi, I'm Jacob Murray, writer of The Eighth Immortal and Court of the Dead comic from Sideshow Collectibles, and you're watching The Experience.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. We are going to talk about the Wrecking Crew, a group of comic book villains that have been around a long time, and we're going to get our first live action look at them. I don't know how much we'll get to see of them, but we're going to get some. And they make their debut in the most recent She-Hulk, but again, no spoilers other than that. Headbanging the DA. Yep. That's so much a better theme. I'm telling you. I do it too. I kind of get my energy up. It's like, yeah, all right, I'm going to do the show now. And then I come in going, yeah, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. But before the other one, maybe you want to do the, hey, everybody, we're at the Dan Wickline Show. So, But again, check out the membership services. We got some really cool stuff coming up, including you can win a slabbed comic book. And if you have not slabbed your comics, they're not cheap. It's a chunk of cash. I've done one, and it's not cheap. So, dang it, posted on the wrong account. Why do you have 2 accounts, Sean? What are you trying to hide? Is that your porn account, Sean? Is it? Just asking among friends here. I mean, just between us. So, all right. Last night, again, the Wrecking Crew made their. I have 4 technically. Let's see. JD says Liv Tyler was just renewed for 9/11 or 9/11 Lone Star, and Nelson is filming a short with a feature scheduled next. Yeah, but She-Hulk's already done, so that wouldn't throw off anybody. So if Tim Blake Nelson does show up, I don't think it should surprise us. Don't give up my secret. Okay. Well, mum's the word. No problem. So, all right. So let's talk about the Wrecking Crew, because again, we got our first look at them last night, or if you haven't watched the episode yet, you will. And I thought a quick primer would be a a good idea. So, who are the Wrecking Crew? Well, first you got to know it didn't start off as the Wrecking Crew. It started off as the Wrecker, a guy named, this is such a comic book name, Dirk Garthwaite. Dirk. Have you ever met a guy named Dirk? Do you know any friends named Dirk? I mean, sure, there's Dirk Diggler, but that was a made-up name about a made-up name. So, well, Dirk is a character created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. It was in the pages of Thor number 148, and it was all the way back in November of 1967. You realize a lot of these comic characters we're dealing with are 50 plus years old at this point. Half the time I talk to Lisa about some of the characters coming up, and I'm like, oh, it's going to be this character name. You know, it's going to be Wonder Man. And she's like, that's a goofy name. Why would you? Like, yeah, but it wasn't goofy in 1960s. It was normal in 1960s. It's just now that we look at them and say that's goofy, right? Now, Dirk was raised by an abusive father, which I don't know why they always put that in the, we get that a lot when it comes to villains. Like they need to establish why they went bad. They couldn't just go bad because they were bad. But Dirk was raised by an abusive father who supposedly died at the age of 4. Now, the reason they say supposedly, I guess he comes back, but I couldn't find any listing of what happened when Dad came home. So, hey, Triple B. So Dirk was then raised by a single mother who had to take multiple jobs to pay the bills, which ended up leaving Dirk home alone for long periods of time. Basically, he was a latchkey kid. And we know all latchkey kids turned out to be evil villains, right? Right. Well, this led him to be antisocial and occasionally violent, and that combination cost him his job at a demolition company. You would think being violent at a demolition company would actually make you Employee of the Month. But nope, this didn't work for him. And with no prospects, he turned to a life of crime. But he always added like mayhem and destruction to what he was doing. It was kind of his theme. He actually put on a costume and called himself the Wrecker and would break into places and cause a bunch of damage while stealing. Now, again, not a very efficient criminal because when you're taking the time to do a bunch of damage, you're lingering and giving the cops more time to get there. Now, he never got caught, which is great. But the trademark kind of became his thing of damage, and he did it with a crowbar. So he just took a crowbar with him everywhere and caused a bunch of damage. That was kind of his signature. Well, he got cocky, started doing more and more daring things with each crime, and he ended up deciding to try to rob a posh hotel room. Well, it turns out the person living in this posh hotel room, or occupying it at the time, was Loki of Asgard. Now, Loki had been depowered by Odin. Turns out both he and Thor had gotten smacked down by Old One-Eye. And Loki was in the midst of trying to call upon one of his allies, Karnilla the Norn Queen, to grant him some magical powers so that he could then go after Thor. Well, this just happens to be when the Wrecker decides to break in. He ends up welcome, honored channel member. Oh, Triple B is a okay, so that's how we can tell channel members. All right, thank you, Triple B, for joining. So the Wrecker breaks in, interrupts the ritual of calling Karnilla, and while they're fighting, he's easily able to defeat Loki because Loki, again, is depowered. So when Karnilla shows up, the Wrecker is actually wearing Loki's helmet with the big horns, and she just grants the magic as requested to the guy with the big horns. And in doing so, she gives Dirk super strength, which he then used to go on a violent wrecking spree. I don't know why. Just he gets super strong, takes his crowbar and starts beating the crap out of things. And of course, this cuts the attention of Thor, who had also been depowered, as I said earlier, and the Wrecker is just beating the crap out of him. Well, what ends up happening is Lady Sif ends up taking control of the destroyer, the Asgardian automaton, sends it down, and the destroyer ends up defeating the Wrecker and saving Thor. Now, he then gets put into prison, where he's under heavy sedation for a very long time. But he builds up this immunity to the medication, which allows him to eventually break out and battle Thor again. But this time, Dirk ends up having his powers drained from him by Mjolnir. This was back at the time where Marvel tended to give extra superpowers to their characters to help with the story, kind of convenient things. Well, while incarcerated this time, Dirk believed that his powers had not vanished, but had actually gone back into his crowbar. So he decided to escape, and he enlists the aid of 3 other inmates, Dr. Elliot Franklin, Henry Camp, and Brian Kaluski. Now, they were able to escape. And by the way, there's a theme that goes on here. And it goes on with every Marvel villain, is they end up in prison and then they escape. Which means that the Marvel, even when they create stuff like the Vault and the Raft and all of these other prisons, they're easily escaped. These guys get out so often, it's ridiculous. They're like, a puppy that can sneak out a back door with no problem. So, real quick, Akuma asked what my favorite DC superhero is. Green Arrow. It's always going to be my answer, Green Arrow. Now, when they get the crowbar, they were able to get out. They were able to track down the crowbar, and all 4 of them held it during an electrical storm. And when it got struck by lightning, the power then escapes from the crowbar and goes into the 4 men. Now, not sure how this all works, but suddenly the crowbar is still powerful. The Dr. Franklin becomes Thunderball, and he carries a ball and chain that gets empowered. Henry Camp, ends up becoming Bulldozer, and he gets a helmet that basically allows him to be immune when he rams things and gives him super strength. And then there's Kaluski, who becomes the pile driver. And the interesting thing about him is he doesn't get any weapons. He gets a pair of oversized hands, and he's stronger than the other ones. So while the other ones actually get weapons, he just gets big fists and can beat up things or pound on things. Now, all of this happens in Defenders number 17. Defenders number 17. By the way, Dirk Nowitzki, former Dallas... Dirk Nowitzki, who is from another country, isn't he? Isn't he German? Thought so. Okay. So, Defenders 17 by Len Wein and Sal Buscema in August of 1974. Now, the 4 supervillains become the Wrecking Crew, led by the Wrecker, or Dirk. And while at first I love this plan. They basically hold buildings hostage. They say, nice building you got here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. And if they didn't get paid, then they would destroy the building. They were literally a wrecking crew, which is kind of a mix. It's either genius writing or lazy writing. I'm not sure which at this point. But so that was their gig. And while that kind of was working that for them for a while, Dr. Franklin suddenly remembers, and again, one of the wrecking crew is a doctor who happened to have built a gamma bomb. And then it was stolen from him by his research partner. So they decide to track down this gamma bomb and use it to basically blackmail New York. So while they're holding buildings for hostage, they're doing fine. They go out and they track down this gamma bomb and decide to threaten all of New York. Then the Defenders come in and kick their ass. Kind of funny. Had they stick with just doing the buildings, they would have been fine. But now, when they did that, at least the Defenders were thinking. They separated the crew, put each one in a different prison, and they took the crowbar, and Doctor Strange put that in another dimension, which sounds like a great idea. And that's another thing where they go, hey, we got this great way to deal with these guys. Wonderful. And then the next time they want to use them, they just kind of do well, that didn't work. Wave away. In which case, the next time they were used, the Puppet Master decided he wanted to force the Wrecker to go up the Fantastic Four. So the Puppet Master was able to go to the other dimension, get the crowbar, and bust the Wrecker out, and then use his magic clay to force him to fight the Fantastic Four. Another battle he lost. And then he escaped custody and broke out the rest of the crew and decided to take on his first enemy, Thor. And they actually decide to go and get Iron Fist. Don't know why. But they go and get Iron Fist, and they get him to go with them and force him to go with them to the Avengers Mansion, and Thor's not there. So it's like, we're here to kill Thor. Nope, not home. So they end up fighting with Captain America, and Iron Fist, of course, is able to switch sides, and Iron Fist and Captain America take them out. And then later on, they'd be beaten by the Fantastic Four again, then they'd be beaten by Thor again. They were kind of the villain of the month for a while there, you know? They would just kind of be brought into, and somebody wanted to kick their butt, and then they would go away. Now, that was until Secret Wars happened. And I don't mean the more recent Secret Wars with Battle Worlds and all that stuff. I mean the old school Secret Wars where the Beyonder with the big shoulder pads and the curly hair decided to take all the heroes to another world, heroes and villains to another planet and force them to fight. And the Beyonder thought the Wrecking Crew was a good choice. They took all four of them. And again, they were forced to fight in Secret Wars. And then when they came back, the crew ended up joining up with Baron Zemo and forming the new Masters of Evil. And again, they tried and failed to take on the Avengers. They ended up going up against two different Spider-Women, both Jessica Drew and Julia Carpenter, the new Spider-Woman that was introduced in Secret Wars. They ended up in the vault. They tried to escape, only to be stopped by Captain America. Then another escape, and this time they ended up going toe-to-toe with Thor, the group called Code Blue, which was like the NYPD's group to take on superheroes. And then Excalibur got involved, except Excalibur was tricked into believing that Thor was Juggernaut by Enchantress and Ulik, who, along with Loki, had their own plans for the Wrecker. And they would pop up a few other times, at one point going up against the Thing or Ghost Rider and Mephisto, some more times against Excalibur. At one point, I love this, Marvel decided the way they were going to take care of villains was they were going to put them in what they called the Big House, which was this tiny little prison created by Hank Pym. And then they would use Pym particles to shrink the villains down and put them in this tiny little prison, which seems like a great idea, but somehow they got out of that too. And that's the thing, is they just keep getting out of things. They ended up eventually at the Raft, where they escaped because Electro did his big escape. They ended up joining up with the Hood during the Civil War, when the Hood decided to put all the villains together to try to take advantage of this vacuum of power with all the heroes fighting each other. And that might be important, since the Hood is going to come into live action in the Ironheart series. So maybe these guys, when they come out of She-Hulk, will end up over there. I'm thinking no, and I'll explain why in a minute. But you got that going on. So they get involved with the Hood. While working with the Hood's gang, they go up against the New Avengers. They go up against Daredevil. And at one point, they even get hired by Jigsaw to try to take out the Punisher. And they get their ass kicked each time. Now, they were still with the Hood during Dark Reign, and they got kind of souped up a little bit by Norman Osborn. And they end up going against Spider-Man and Captain America, and then at one point against Deadpool and the New Avengers again. And they were even part of the siege of Asgard. And then after each occasion, they would end up back on the raft, which again, how hard can it be to escape the raft if they keep getting out? Now, the crew would return to Masters of Evil again to take on Spider-Man and his new group, the Superior Six, that he had at the time. And they lost. And they stayed with the Masters of Evil for a while this time, taking on the Secret Avengers and Domino. And then they got hired by Mr. Sinister to try and find Wolverine's adamantium-laced body that had been left in the Paradise installation. And they would eventually end up in Pleasant Hill. Pleasant Hill is this little town that S.H.I.E.L.D. was using to house criminals because, again, you can easily get out of the raft and the vault in the big house. So S.H.I.E.L.D. decided, okay, we're going to make this little small town, and we've got this cosmic cube that has a name named Kobik. Of course, he was part of the Secret Empire story. And they basically used Kobik to mentally alter these villains to believing they're just happy people living in a small town. Well, Baron Zemo comes along and restores everybody's memory, and then the crew did exactly what they do, and they wrecked the town. This led to them being part of the Masters of Evil again, going up against the Thunderbolts and actually defeating the Thunderbolts. They actually won this time, and in doing so, 3 members of the Thunderbolts switched sides and joined the Masters of Evil. That would be the Fixer, Atlas, and Moonstone. And this all became part of Hydra as they kind of tapped into that alternate reality where Captain America was a Hydra agent. This was all during the Secret Empire story. And Hydra used this army of evil along with the Wrecking Crew and stuff to kind of take control and draw out all the heroes in an attack on Manhattan. And then once they got all the heroes there, they teleported all of the bad guys out. And then Zemo had the Darkhold, and he used it to boost Blackout's power to create this Dark Force dome around Manhattan, trapping all the heroes in it. This was a really good plan, and then once Hydra took over everything, they decided that the Masters of Evil could be a threat, so they basically put them into stasis and left them there until once all that ended, they would be freed. But yeah, they were taken out of play at that point. And then we ended up with the Wrecking Crew returning to the Hood's gang and teaming up with other villains to try to stop Dr. Doom, who at one point decided to be a good guy, kind of become the new Iron Man. And they would actually beat Dr. Doom, and the Hood's gang got to, including the Wrecking Crew, got to ransack Castle Doom, looking for Doom's fortune. Masters of Evil sounds like a bad Metallica cover band. It does. It absolutely does. You're right. Other dimension equals superhero landfills? Yeah. Pretty much. All right. So, one of the interesting things about the crew is, like I said, 3 of them have weapons, 1 doesn't. It's just the big guy with a fist. Well, they kind of changed that in the upcoming live action thing, where we meet them last night. Bulldozer doesn't have the big metal helmet he has in the comics. He's got a hard hat, but it's glowing, so it's powerful. And Thunderball has his ball and chain, and it's glowing, and the Wrecker's crowbar is glowing. But Pile Driver, they actually give him a pair of gauntlets that are glowing. So I think instead of just saying he's got big hands and can beat up things, they actually allowed him to have an object, which I think makes a lot more sense than just he has big hands, Now, casting, that's where it gets interesting. The Wrecker is played by a guy named Nick Gomez, who has appeared in a lot of television over years, including Dawson's Creek, Bosch, Dexter, Criminal Minds. So he's a regular on television. On the other hand, Thunderball is played by a guy named Justin Eaton. And Justin mainly works as a stuntman. And in various, he's been in various Marvel series, including Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The Defenders. He was in the show Banshee. But he has also specifically worked as Frank Castle's stunt double on The Punisher and John Walker's stunt double on The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting is that if you do get to see a picture of them, and there's a picture of them online right now, Bulldozer, Pile Driver, and Wrecker, you get to see their faces. Thunderball actually has a ski mask on. So, I don't know. Maybe they do plan on using these guys later, and they're going to keep the 3 actors, but they couldn't cast Thunderball in time. So they just used a stuntman, and they're going to replace him later. That's why we don't see his face. It's possible. Also, the names of the other 2 actors for the other 2 characters has not been announced yet. So we don't know who played Bulldozer and Pile Driver yet. But again, if they're using a stuntman for Thunderball, maybe we're not going to get to see them again. Or they're going to replace him. I don't know. It just seems kind of strange. But yeah, so that's the Wrecking Crew. And they've been around a lot of years, been dealing with a lot of heroes popping up, but they're kind of an interesting look. They're very blue collar. You recognize them when you see them. It's not like matching uniforms. They're not like the Fantastic Four where they all kind of color coordinate. They are all over the place color-wise. And Thunderball has actually had some adventures kind of outside of the group, and the Wrecker does. But overall, you get all 4 of them at the same time. So it'll be interesting to see. Now, something important does happen when they appear. But again, we'll talk about that on Tuesday because I want you guys to see it before we talk about it. But it is kind of an important scene. So it's near the end of the episode. Make sure you stick around and watch it. Don't just, that's not the time to get up and get a beer. So, all right, let's take our second break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up the show. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat, and we'll talk about it with the rest of the episode. Be right back.
Thanks for tuning into The Experience. Help us out and hit subscribe over on YouTube and click the bell when you do. Need some help? Scan the QR code in the bottom corner.
This is The Experience.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hey there. Hi there. Ho there. You're as welcome as can be.
Hi, I'm Nancy McCann. Welcome to Friday Night Live on The Experience.
Welcome, everybody. It's Fat Jack's Comic Crypt. Brendan, Al, Jason, hanging out.
There I am. Welcome back to Kicking It with Henry, folks. I am your host, Henry Kumpa. It's great to be here with you guys.
So we are going to talk about books that are in stores this week.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Mishmash.
Hello, and welcome to the Black Comics Universe, presented by Peep Game Comics.
And you gotta love it that the first people in the minute to skim it are creators.
Up, everybody! Welcome to another Wednesday Warriors. My name is Joey Galvez, and this is my pal Ambrosia.
Hey, everybody! Welcome to Space Cadet.
Hey!
What's up?
Welcome, everyone, for another episode of I Must Ask You a Question.
Hi, everybody, welcome to Nerd News Now.
Hey, this is Rex. Welcome to Comic Collectibles.
Hey, hello, all you happy people. Welcome to the Dan Wickline Show.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. This is the crazy show that we do on Thursdays called What's in the Box?
What's in the box?
Comic culture and sales.
Hi, my My name is Brian Phillipson, co-writer on Weed Magic and co-founder of Bliss on Tap Publishing and home of Duel, and you're watching The Experience.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. We've got a few minutes left, so let me catch you up on a few things. First off, remember to stick around after the show. Miss Jen will be coming up with What's in the Box, where she goes out into the warehouse, picks a random box, brings it in, and sells whatever is in it. I keep waiting for them to come in with somebody's lunch, maybe a dead rat, whatever, something unique. But so far, it's mostly been comics, which makes sense being it's a comic shop. We have a full lineup tonight. I don't necessarily remember most of it, but I know that Kicking It with Henri is going to end the night. We have that silly named game show, Something Warfare, and there's something in between the two. You know, they never remember to put in private chat the list so I can actually say, hey, this is what we got coming up. But definitely stick around. We got a lot of great stuff this evening. So stick around for that. You guys have probably heard me talk about Karma, which is the romantic erotic graphic novel that I wrote. We did a Kickstarter for it, and then Dynamite picked it up and is putting it out into comic shops. Well, that will hit comic shops a week from today or tomorrow. So Wednesday next week, Karma. This, of course, is a Stepan Sedgwick cover. There's also a cover by Michael D. Pascal and Mirka Andolfo. It is a 120-page graphic novel, and I would hold up some pages, but I've got to find a set that doesn't have any nudity on it. So this is it was a fun book to write, and I hope people like it. It's gotten some really good reviews so far. Here we go. There's some more pages. The interior pages are by Carlos Renault, who is absolutely fantastic. And like I said, the graphic novel comes out. It's a hardcover graphic novel, by the way. So we did all of them hardcover. And they will be out on Wednesday of next week. It's myself, the writer, Carlos Renault is the artist. The colorists are Marcio Fieri of IHQ Studios. It was lettered by Carlos Mangual of Social Myth Studios and edited by Joseph Ryband. You don't give enough credit to the editors. They are a big part of the industry. They make these things happen, but very rarely do we include them in the credits like that. Second thing was announced today. I have a essay I wrote that's coming out in a new book. The book is from Becky Books, and they do a lot of kind of deep dives into different things. They talk about watching Saturday morning cartoons or watching some of the Japanese imports in the afternoon when we'd get home from school, those kind of things. They did a whole thing about running home to watch Dark Shadows. He's also done a bunch of books having to do with the 1966 Batman series. Well, he's got a new book coming out called The Old Origin Changeth, and it's taking a look at 6 classic comic characters and how their origins have changed over the years. Included in this book are Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Captain America, Spider-Man, and the Fantastic Four. I got to write the Captain America one, which I found incredibly interesting because of the changes that happened between what Joe Simon and Jack Kirby wrote in 1941 or 1940 and how Stan Lee and Jack Kirby approached it later on in 1963. It is a fascinating story about the changes and why they were that made, and then as well when it got changed again by Ed Brubaker to insert the Winter Soldier. So that's just my part of it. It's a 10,000 word essay. So there's 6 essays in there. And if you are a comic historian or love comic history, you want to check this out. It'll be out later this fall, but it's called The Old Order Changeth, and it's coming out from Becky Books. And then finally, we've got some big stuff coming up news-wise. Next week will be D23, and I won't be live that weekend, but what I will be doing is posting some of the news bits on TikTok, and that'll feed out into my Instagram and Facebook, so you can follow me at any of those places. The TikTok is at Dan Wickline, all one word. Facebook is Dan Wickline, and then Instagram is DanWick70. So you can follow all of those places and pick up on some of the latest news. When something breaks, I do a quick 60-second coverage of it, and then we'll come back and talk about it regularly on the Dan Wickline Show. But it's a way to get the latest news as it happens. So now, stick around. JD has put in the chat the What's in the Box is at 8 p.m. or 6 p.m. Then Space Cadets at 8. Nerdcular Warfare game show is after that at 9. Henri has a full Labor Day weekend set up, so unfortunately he had to cancel his show tonight and tomorrow. So you won't be kicking it with Henri, it turns out. He's going to be taking a Labor Day, but you do get Nerdcular Warfare, Space Cadets, and What's in the Box starting right after this. So you want to stick around for that. I hope you guys have had a good week. Next week, we will talk about She-Hulk Episode 3. We'll talk about Rings of Power, which comes out tomorrow. And Thursday, if anything drops during the day for Disney Plus Day, mostly they're going to save the information for D23, but we'll talk about it on Thursday. If not, we will talk about the movie The Samaritan with Sylvester Stallone, which I still need to watch this weekend. So you guys should watch it too, and we'll all talk about it on Thursday of next week. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll see you soon. Good night, everybody.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.